Okay, good evening. Today is June 23rd, 2016. This is the board meeting for the Hyde Park Central School District. At this time, I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss confidential matters pertaining to the employment of a particular person or persons.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. We're now in executive session. Okay. I think we're ready to go. So at this time, I have a motion to return to open session, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. You're going to get it, Gary. You're going to get it. Okay. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And that would be my fourth pledge of the day, so it's like I feel like I'm really patriotic. Okay, there are no agenda modifications. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as listed?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And that brings us to Pride. So we have a number of...
Do you want me to do that one here or up here?
I'll do it over here.
Oh,
You shouldn't be getting up. Are you going first?
Oh, no, let's do our things first, and then you'll be more prideful.
okay.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
We're changing things up a bit tonight.
Alrighty.
Kevin's just back out. I guess I'll go first. We had an unexpected pleasure. Dr. Rychek has been presented with the Rotarian of the Year award for Hyde Park. So this is another one. You're going to do Cora?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to speak first?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I've been a Rotarian for 6 years, and it's a small club, and we do a lot. And they basically were recognizing that for practically 20 years, they've been trying to have an Interact club at the high school, and I've been the advisor for the last 5. And so they definitely got an Interact club, which is a junior Rotary club. Tonight we want to do things a little differently. It is the end of a year, and we have big changes. And so later on in the agenda, you will see that Ms. Cora Stemple is leaving us to go to Ulster BOCES to be the deputy superintendent. So it's a goodbye and a good luck, and we are so thrilled that you have this opportunity. This is a really difficult one to talk about. So I'm going to read a little bit. I wanted to write the letter of recommendation for Cora. Cora's been here for 12 years. I want to say personally that she's been my wingman, my co-pilot, my advisor, my friend, and certainly one of the best colleagues that one could ask for. I know that when I applied for the job in this district, one of the things that made it an easy decision to come to Hyde Park was I knew Cora, and I knew the caliber of her work, and knew that that would make my job easier, and I would have somebody who had an incredible skill set right there, and so we've had a great run for 6 years. What I said in the letter was that although this was going to be a significant loss for the Hyde Park Central School District, the overall gain for Dutchess County is incredible. We have a new district superintendent, and now we'll have a new deputy superintendent. As I wrote that, I knew how all of my colleagues would feel, and we had our last meeting today, the Dutchess County School Superintendents, and the buzz around the table was incredible excitement that Cora was going to go to BOCES. She has worked with all the component school districts for 12 years now. She sits at the Assistant Superintendent's monthly table, but in the 12 years she's been here, every superintendent, except for maybe the most recent ones, know and admire Cora. Two of our colleague superintendents were on the selection committee, and it was pretty much hands down. Cora's had numerous contributions to the Hyde Park Central School District. Under her leadership, we've seen a significant increase in graduation rates, scores. Our professional development program is comprehensive. We use in-house people, outside people, so she's built capacity within the district and certainly supported all the administrators by putting together a comprehensive professional development team for staff at all levels. I don't want to There's a lot in this letter. It was a long letter. But she's extremely knowledgeable in all things related to federal and state mandates and policies, human resource management, contract negotiations, systemic improvement, supervision of professional staff, the evaluation process, grant writings, and I ended the whole long list, which is much longer than this, that she's the complete package. Dutchess BOCES, sorry, Ulster, we're both originally Ulster BOCES on that side of the river, but when I first read the job description, they put together a trifold glossy job description of this deputy superintendent. I'm like, shoot, she is the only person who's going to apply for this job that has worked in every single bullet point on this brochure, and that's why she got the job. We had a conversation once where, after writing the letter of recommendation, I thought, we don't want you to leave, but how could they not take you after I explained that you're the only person who has all the qualifications? I'd be insulted if they didn't recognize what we recognized. It's a loss on many levels. It's a celebration on many levels. And Cora, come on up. We'd like to thank you for 12 years of excellent service.
I would like to get a couple words in, actually. So I don't know if this is working. I actually wanted to say a couple of words because 12 years ago, I was sitting right where Perry is, and we had an instant connection. And her job was to kick me in the legs when I said something stupid. So this leg, this leg
why you limp.
is slightly curved. So, and then afterwards we had eye contact. When I was over here, when I needed help, I would turn to her. But I am going to miss you. I really am.
Oh, my goodness. So I guess this is really happening. Up until the last couple of days, I've been able to just be very, very busy at the business of ending the school year and getting things ready and trying to leave things in the best possible way that I can. And most recently, it feels real. And the most important thing that I can share is just how privileged and honored I have been to be part of this district. Members of the board and members of the community have heard me say before that there is not a single district that I would ever go to, and I have never felt such a connection and such pride, although I probably have no right to feel proud of the administrative team here and the way they work together and all that they've accomplished. And to have been allowed to be a part of that and to hopefully contribute to all of that has just been an incredible journey, and I can't thank you, the board, and everyone else for the continued support that I've had. You have challenged me and stretched me and taught me all kinds of things and been ever supportive when I have needed something on behalf of our staff or students. So for that, I thank you. And I can say, even though it's public and on TV, Hyde Park will be my best customer, and I look forward to serving the district in another way. So thank you so much.
And of course, I have a tickle in my throat. It must seem to be that, you know, the dozen years is the the theme of the day. We would like to, we have a plaque for Gary McGrath for his board service. He's not here tonight. We would like to publicly thank Gary. He served a very good 3-year term. We were happy to have him. The Energy Committee and his expertise in the area of facilities and Policy Committee. And he was a great board member, and we were very happy for his service during his term. And he'll be missed, but we know where he lives. And he also said he would still be willing to be on committees, so please contact him for any committee work.
And maybe overstating this a little bit, but I think he felt frustrated. This is for the 2 new board members. The first 3 years are really hard to get going and understanding what you can do and you can't do, and I think he was a little frustrated. And as much as I tried to get him to stay on the board, not that I didn't want either of you to be on the board, but I would encourage both of you that, you know, don't worry if you feel frustrated in the first year or the first 2 years, the first 3 years, because you are going to run again, and it'll get better. So, here.
I can take a sip of that. Thank you, Doug.
Well, that brings us to the old man on the not chronologically, but Kevin has 12 years of service, interrupted. I remember coming to board meetings when you were on with the crazy people. And feeling very sorry for you up there. But you lived through that. Then you came back. You were president for a while. And so I am personally going to miss you because of your counsel and your knowledge for not only education law, but your common sense and things that sometimes people, myself especially, get carried away and you go, oh, wait a minute, you can't do that. So we're going to miss that. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so come on up, Kevin. So, yes. we'd like to present you with this plaque for your 12 years of board service. Kevin is the consummate professional. In addition to everything that he brings to the table from his professional work and his values of volunteerism and civic paying it forward. As you know, this is a huge paying it forward to serve on a Board of Education. To serve on a Board of Education in a school district where you graduated is an incredible role model for our young people. You not only have the institutional knowledge from when you have served on the board for 12 years, you have the institutional knowledge from a student's perspective. You know the guts of the school, you know the inner workings, you know the culture in a way that unless you've walked through those halls, you can't manufacture that. So you will be incredibly missed on a personal level, on a professional level, and on an institutional level. So we know where you live, and I do want to say that this last term was just the biggest act of selflessness I've ever seen. We had an opening on the board. We had no one to run for the board. And Kevin said, I'm not going to watch what happened years ago where all of a sudden, you know, some write-in gets in because nobody cared enough to volunteer or run for the board. And I know that it was a sacrifice, and you stepped forward when you were needed the most. And for me, I can't thank you enough for stepping forward 3 years ago. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. You know, just as a quick, quick note of thanks. You know, I don't really like all the hoopla and all that, but I really, first of all, you know, I do want to, in light of what Greer said, I do want to thank Denise and Mike, for example, for stepping forward. You know, because I really did mean it to be one and done this time around. And the last time I did get involved because I didn't think anybody was going to run, and you know, that's always a concern. And you know, it's a nice time to leave. We've got a great board in place, great administration. Things are running very smoothly. This last 3 years has been actually relatively painless compared to the previous 9 at different times were a little difficult and problematic. But you know, it really hasn't been that big of a burden. But I also felt it was time to let somebody else do it. And again, I want to thank Denise and Mike for stepping forward, because I know I'm going to leave it in good hands. And that, I think, and Gary, I think, would agree that, you know, we feel pretty good about the fact that we didn't have an issue where somebody would come out of the woodwork and totally destroy the place, because it's happened in this community before. I never want to forget that. You know, so again, thank you all. I've enjoyed serving with you, and I'll still be around. You'll be able to find me. So, and all the best, and continue the good work that you do here. Thank you.
Okay, Garrett. Garrett, you will always be the first student representative. We have a little plaque for you. You exceeded our expectations, I have to say. You've been vocal, you've spoken up, you've brought great stuff on Pride at the high school, and I think this little, not really an experiment, but this move has been greatly enhanced due to your personality and your hard work. So thank you very much.
So I guess the trend has been going after the award. You're supposed to give a little speech. So as Mr. Sheehan said, that despite my term being done, I'm still going to be around. And so when I come home from school and such, I would still like to be able to make as many school events as possible. FDR will forever be my home here. And I think I can take a lot of comfort in James coming in after me, knowing that he'll do a bang-up job. Thank you.
Thank you. It is it was incredible to be here during this historic time when, and I think FDR and Eleanor would be extremely proud that we have, that the community made the determination and supported having a student voice at the table. So thank you for your year of service and best of luck in all you do, and definitely keep us posted. We'll be following you. We might as well stay up here and then we'll get to the other pride. How's that?
By all means.
So I'd ask Luigi and Lisa Capola, they're on the agenda for formal pride. Come on up. We don't want to make them stay through the whole evening. Later on in the agenda, you will read that the Board of Education is accepting a $22,000 donation from the Claudio Cares Foundation. Certainly not much for what the donation, but would like to present you with a certificate to the Claudio Cares Foundation for the generous donation to the Hyde Park Central School District. I do want to say that from the moment the Claudio Cares Foundation began, we've tried to, you've had partners in students and staff and faculty and administration, but the yeoman's work, we know that you continue every day, each and every day, and we have certainly benefited through scholarships and beyond scholarships and beyond financial impact. You brought the community together at your biggest time of grief and turned it around to something good for the community. You brought our students together, you brought our staff together, and it's had a tremendous impact. Whether it's the car show or the can drive, the logo, the branding, the Snowflake Gala, it's truly amazing. And for those of you who don't know, we haven't been the only recipients. The vision of your foundation is countywide, and there are scholarships in every school district in the county. And from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for this donation. It's incredible. We hope to make you proud. There'll be a meeting coming up. The intent of the donation is a memorial computer lab at our high school, and we'll be putting our heads together with the technology department and really making it something that you can be proud of, and the Claudio Cares Foundation can be proud of, and represents you well. So thank you for the donation. It's amazing. You're doing amazing work, and I don't know if you want to say anything, but yes, come on.
Get the donation first.
Yeah.
Okay. Linda, you take this.
When Claudio came to Lisa in church that day and told her that he wanted us to begin this, we never, ever would have thought that this would have grown to what it has. We initially thought it would be a little can drive we would have every year on his birthday. And that little can drive turned into something unbelievable. This year alone, Claudio Cares has donated and given out awards totaling over $46,000. We just topped the $200,000 mark that we've given away so far between donations and scholarships, and this will be our 4th computer lab that we've built. And all of this came because you all came together at our time of need. Probably a time that we hope and pray no one ever has to go through. But as Claudio pulled everybody together at FDR, even in his death, he pulled together an entire community. And this donation is not from us. This donation is from everyone, because you have all had a part of it. You've all helped. I see all these faces of people that have donated their time and volunteered. And it's been nothing short of incredible to think that you all have done this, and we thank you very much for allowing us the ability to give back to our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, Garrett, you're up.
So between now and the last meeting, the main part of those 2 weeks were really taken up of testing. So it's a bit thin tonight. As far as student government goes, in some of our on our last day of school, we took up a collection and to gather gently used items from all the different students to try and help next year's students, that those who might be in need of things like notebooks, pencils, erasers, folders of that type. It's always sad to see, and I can speak firsthand to this, of you use half of a notebook and then the other half sits unused for forever. So it's really nice to see that we've started in student government picking up this collection to make sure those notebooks go to a much better use. Senior week took place this week. On Monday, we had a very exciting trip to Six Flags New England, which we're sure everyone had a blast at. It was great weather. We had our senior barbecue on Tuesday, and then yesterday was a Mets game. Then today was the rehearsal, and tomorrow, of course, is the big day, which has been what all this has been leading up for, is the graduation itself. Hopefully, as many of you can make it as possible. On the sports side of things, the past 2 weeks, really all the sports have been over. However, two of our softball players, Alyssa Fitcher and Amanda Owens, were recognized by the Daily Freeman, and so congratulations to them. And tomorrow for our graduation, the commencement speech will be done by Patrick Manning, who is very exciting because him and himself is a 1985 FDR graduate, so it's great to see, and a classmate of Mr. Sheehan's. So, this is so impressive being an FDR grad that he won a silver medal at the Olympics at rowing, and has been extremely successful in business as well. And beyond that, he's just a tremendous man. I was able to have lunch with him today, and all around just a great guy. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say to myself and all my classmates tomorrow at his commencement speech. That's a wrap for me, so if you have anything else.
Thanks, Garrett. I guess we're to superintendent's report.
Yeah, and I will just say that the moving up ceremonies, we divide and conquer, and all the moving up 8th grade and 5th grades, they were wonderful ceremonies, really well done, and there was tears at every one of them at one point or another, so really well done. Just a heads up, while some people are winding down and thinking we're closing the doors, on July 1st, our extended school year starts. We have approximately 67 students arriving on July 1st, and then on July 5th, the remainder of our summer bridge program students come, and that's approximately 200. So by July 5th, we'll have close to 300 students in. We do have curriculum writing, professional development, camps, a whole host of other programs. So while it might seem like summer break for others, the transportation department is going crazy with brand new bus schedules, and we're hiring and pretty much completely hired. But so our doors open again on July 1st.
Anybody else have any other prime?
Well, that was superintendent's report. Oh, was that in prime?
Because I really neglected to ask, but so, okay. So now, you can finish up.
I'm done.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right.
Okay.
You know, things were going so well. Why should we should have just ended it at all the feel-good stuff and said just, but we can't.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
No.
Give it to you now.
No, sorry. Sorry, nice try, though.
You won't have any trouble getting that.
Just
I didn't
put
think
Jason
so.
and Rick in the consent agenda. Just move them.
That brings us to a debt service update.
Okay, and we would like to have Linda and Jason. Jason is from our financial advisor firm, and This is a segue to Elliot talking about the building condition survey because, as you know, if we plan any building project, one of the things the district is committed to is keeping our debt service relatively even so that, and our buildings safe and leak-free and in good condition. But in order to look at future capital projects, it's incumbent upon us to look at our financial debt service and how we would or could manage any future capital projects. So Jason, come on up. I think Linda's going to join.
We have our presentation up on the screen tonight too for anyone. I apologize, I think I'm just a couple copies short for everybody at the table, but if anybody wants to look on together, I think I had 1,000 copies, so like they wanted.
It's the same one that's on, it's the same
Some
one.
of us have it online.
Yeah,
so-
we have it online.
Okay, great.
Garrett.
I have a hard copy, so.
Yeah.
We'll share.
Yeah.
We have a PDF presentation, so I'm assisting.
So thank you. As Drew mentioned, I'm Jason Schwartz from Bernard Dining Incorporated, your financial consultant, so we help manage the district's.
You're televised.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. As I was saying, as Greer mentioned, I'm Jason Schwartz, and I'm from Bernard Dining Incorporated, the district's financial consultants. And we've got a tough act to follow tonight, coming off of so much good service and donations and goodwill. But we'll try our best to keep the good news rolling, hopefully. So what we have tonight for you is a little mini report to kind of touch on a couple things. First of all, we're going to do a quick update on the district's existing debt service, what things kind of look like from your prior capital projects and the ones that are finishing up right now. And then from there, we'll kind of roll into how does that project forward to what you could potentially do down the road. And then that'll kind of tie in nicely to Elliot's presentation later on, I think, kind of discussing what was uncovered with your architect through the building condition survey. So if you want to flip to, I believe it's page 8 of the report, that'll show you kind of the summary of where your existing debt service is right now for all your capital projects and buses. So what you see here is columns A and B are the total principal and interest on all the all the currently outstanding debt, as well as some assumptions for future borrowings on buses, as well as wrapping up the current $3 million authorization that you're in the middle of. So most of this is locked in, but there are some assumptions in here still on those pieces that are that you're kind of wrapping up and are on notes or were just recently voted. So that's all kind of layered in here. So you see in column C is the total debt service. So that's what you owe on all your debt service. And then column D is the estimated building aid that's coming back on that. Your building aid on the capital project side and your transportation aid for the bus debt service. And it kind of all layers together in terms of what goes on to the tax levy, what your local share is, so to speak, is boxed in there in column F. And you'll see, I know Chuck and myself have been to prior board meetings to kind of discuss the topic with you of, the importance of, if you, to the extent that you can, trying to manage kind of a level local share. What you want to, try to do to the extent that it works for any given district is keep that local share as level as possible for a couple reasons. First of all, you don't want to have the tax rate kind of whipsaw all over the place if debt falls off and then comes right back on 2 years later. To the extent that you can kind of manage it and meet your needs while also kind of keeping that capital side on autopilot, that just kind of helps with your planning from a budgeting perspective. And then secondly, in the tax cap world that we're in nowadays, your local share is an exclusion on your tax cap calculation. So that's nice that fits in there. And so if all of a sudden you have new debt come on, you do get an exclusion for that, so you don't have to, you may not need the super majority. But kind of, the difficult situation that some districts find themselves in is if all of a sudden they let some debt service drop off, the prior year's debt service gets backed out of that equation. So you could wind up in a situation where if you have debt rolling off, you may have, a minimal or even negative allowable levy limit from the calculation. So in other words, you would have to actually cut your levy to not require a 60% supermajority vote. So it's a little bit of an oddity in the law, but that's kind of how the rules are set up right now. And so to the best you can, you have to try to play within them and do what's best for the district. So flipping on to the next page, if you want, we kind of take this bar chart, or sorry, this summary page and put it into a bar chart, because I think it's a little easier to see when you have the bar chart, how this all projects out into the future. So just the difference in colors here is just the blue debt is what's related to capital projects. The red debt is related to the buses. So that's the distinguishment in colors there. But you'll see kind of going out that we've got a nice steady local share for the next couple of years. And that's, from prior debt, as well as, we've built in some, the assumption that we're going to front load the $3 million project a little to stay up there a couple of years. But you'll see out in the 2022 fiscal year, that's where you start to have a little drop and then another bigger drop the following year. So that's kind of where we see an opportunity for, if you have needs, as have been identified in the building condition survey, that's a kind of a good time to try to layer in some new debt service so you can keep that kind of level and flat while also, meeting your needs to keep the health and safety and technology and programmatic needs of the district kind of up to par as were identified in your building condition survey. So that's kind of what we look at when we're trying to help districts plan future capital projects from a debt side, at least anyway, is, where are opportunities like that? And, sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly. You have needs sooner or later, and you just do your best to manage it. But when you've got an opportunity like this and it fits well with the district's needs, then that's, to the extent we can, that's where we try to plan in future projects and see what kind of works there. Any questions, stopping right there real quick, on the existing debt service? The one thing that I'll mention too, I kind of mentioned earlier that there's some assumptions built into this. There's also some assumptions that are not yet built into this that could potentially, we'll get into in a little bit what that drop-off means in terms of a potential future project. But there's a couple things we haven't taken into account here yet that I'll just mention that potentially could make this picture even better from what we'll see tonight. As you're all probably aware, you just voted a $1.1 million cash project in the most recent budget vote. So that's going to generate aid at some point, right? You're going to pay some cash out now, and then that's going to generate aid back over the next 15 years. Based on your current building aid ratio, it would generate about $50,000 a year. We haven't taken that into account yet because it's very early on. We don't have any assumptions yet as far as getting SCD approval, when that project will wrap up and we can file the final paperwork. So we haven't tried to guess when that aid will come on yet, but at some point that $50,000 will come in and that'll reduce your local share because you'll be getting more aid. So that's one thing going. The other thing is the current $3 million project. We just issued the note for that, just did the sale on that recently, and that'll be either just closed or it'll be closing here in the next couple of days. And we've assumed taking that to a bond next summer, that it'll be wrapped up and we'll go to a bond. But to be on the conservative side for your budgeting, we've assumed a 4.5% rate on that bond right now to make sure that you have enough set aside in the budget to pay for that when it comes due. But current market rates right now are probably at about a 2.5%, maybe 3% at most on serial bonds. So if come next June when we're ready to go take that to bonds, we can bond for less, then that also would decrease your local share because you'd have less debt service on that bond. So we've tried to be pretty conservative here so far in projecting out what your local share is. So there's some opportunity for the picture to get even a little better than we have here tonight. So kind of taking this and then rolling into how that could lead to a project. So if you want to flip back to the front of the report now, we'll kind of go through everything the way we normally do. So, because it's still pretty early on, I'll kind of just go through these assumptions high level. And if you have any questions and want me to dive further into anything, feel free to stop me. But I'll just kind of, since it's not something that you're looking to act on tonight, we'll just kind of go through some general assumptions here. To come up with the project that we have for you tonight, we assumed a 58.3% building aid ratio, which is your current year's building aid ratio. We've assumed a 95% bond percentage. So what is that? That means we're assuming that out of the total project costs, 95% of them will be eligible for aid. You might buy something that's not eligible a lot of times the architect will assume, say that it's 100%, but if you kind of try to hit 100% and you miss, there's nowhere to go but down, right? The picture's going to be worse. So we kind of build in a little bit of a conservative cushion there so that if anything does get dinged out by the state as non-aidable, we've got a little bit of wiggle room in there. And we've assumed for now that you would be looking at a vote in December of 17. So that'd be, a little over a year from now. That, if you're voting December 17, the board would be taking action in October of 17. So that gives you a little over a year from now to start planning. Now, if you have needs sooner than that, if you want to vote sooner or you want to push that out a little, there's, we can do things differently, but this kind of works well with a general assumption. The way the projects generally flow, a December 17 vote will work pretty well for you, as we'll see in a couple minutes. So that's why we've kind of plugged that in there for now. It gives you a lot of time as a community to go through, kind of take what was given to you in the building conditions survey and start to prioritize and determine what you want to do. And then kind of, it also, the other benefit of waiting until December 17 is it gives us more time to start to define some of those other pieces I mentioned a minute ago. You'll know where your $3 million project bonded at. You'll have better targets on the cash project. So we'll start to, really hone in on where the local share is and have a better estimate of what you can do for, no or minimal impact to the taxpayers. And then assuming you voted in December of 17, we've assumed about a year later, January of 19, that you get SED approval. That gives you a couple months for the architect to do their design work and, maybe 8 to 10 months for SED to give you the approval, which is kind of where they're at right now. So then you go out to bid that spring of 2019, and then you do your construction in the summer of 2019, maybe flowing through into the summer of 2020 if you needed 2 summers of construction, depending on the size of the project. And so we've kind of structured the borrowings accordingly to have the cash come in when you would need it for those big construction expenditures. And for now, we've assumed borrowing rates of 4% on notes, 5% on bonds. Again, that's pretty conservative in today's market, but as you'll see in bullet number, well, it's not labeled that way, but in bullet number 9, where you have first principal coming due, that's when we're looking to go to the bond, is in that 2020, 2021 year. So we've kind of assumed, built in a conservative interest rate because you're not going to bonds for another 4 or 5 years from right now. So even though rates today are at 2.5%, 3%, we want to kind of build in that cushion for any kind of interest, increase in the interest rate environment, because I feel like I've been saying this forever, but the rates, they're kind of historically low, and you would think they can't stay this low forever. So we want to kind of build in that cushion for you in case they go up. And then line number 12 too, we've assumed in this report that you'll have $2 million of capital reserve available to contribute to this project. I know that was a recent item that was passed. We're assuming you're going to potentially fully fund that before you do a vote, and that would be available as a revenue to downsize the borrowing needs. So flipping over to the next page, and this kind of gets into the projected revenues and expenses, and you'll see why we came up with this number in a little bit, but basically we came up with, the project that'll fit within your drop in debt service is about $11.8 million. So we'll need, on the left-hand side there on the revenues, you'll see that means we're going to use that $2 million in capital reserves, and then we'll bond the differential, the $9.8 million. And in terms of what that means for you for expenses, we've kind of taken $645,000 of that and set it aside for capitalized interest, which, if you recall from prior projects, we need that because the state doesn't start paying you aid until 18 months after you get SED approval. But when you get SED approval, you want to go right out and start construction, right? You're going to hit the ground running. Well, so we're going to go get you a borrowing, and then 12 months later, it's going to come due, and there's going to be an interest payment on that with no aid to offset it. So that capitalized interest allows us to offset that first interest payment and make sure that there's not a spike in the local share for that first year until the aid starts. So it kind of helps us keep that smooth local share that we're trying to do. So that leaves you a residual of about $11.1 million for total project costs, construction, and incidentals.
Can I ask a question here?
Yep.
That's the bond. What's the equivalent capital project amount? Is that
The capital project
is
amount.
it the 58%? Is this 58% of what?
No, the capital project you'd be putting in front of the voters. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be the $11.8 million. So you'd be
Okay.
going out to the voters for a vote of $11,815,000 in this scenario. And we'll get into in a little bit why we came to that number, but essentially that's what fills in that drop in debt service. So that would be what we call a no impact project or no marginal increase, where you can do a project of that amount while keeping your local share level and not having any tax rate increase because of the capital project.
I guess I'm confused about where the state aid comes in.
Right, so you'll see it when we get to the maturity schedule in a little bit, I guess, but if you have 11.8 million or, really 9.8 million is what you're gonna bond, once you bond that and we take a look at the aid coming back on that at the 58%, that local share that gets left is what would fit into the drop in the debt service. So, we kind of size the project to fit to say, a project of this size would give us a local share of $350,000 a year, which fits into that drop in debt service.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on the assumptions there? Okay, so the next couple pages, you can skip over. We don't really need to get into, but that just kind of shows you the assessed values of the district. Those are more important when we're actually looking at a project that is going to have a tax impact, because that'll play into how we project what the cost per homeowner is. But since we're trying to size this to fit within, we don't really take too much of a look at that. So kind of rolling ahead to page 10 there. Again, these are pages we don't really need to get into, but this kind of shows you the actual aid calculations. So what the one we'll really focus on is if you want to go to the blue sheet, page 12. That's where you can kind of see how this all plays together. Okay, so on page 12, this is the maturity schedule, the payback for this project alone. And then in a minute, we'll look at how this...
This hypothetical project, yes.
Right, yeah, this potential project that we came up with to show you as a theoretical exercise. But, so this is kind of looking at this, potential capital project on its own, and then we'll see in a minute how it fits in with the existing debt service. But column B, we've shown the $2 million of capital reserve that you got that would come into the project. Column C, we show the repayment of the remaining $9.8 million. And then that gets, in column E, you pay the interest on that at the 5%. And right in the middle of the page there, column F, that's what the debt service would be. So you'd have about, $900,000 of debt service to pay for this. But then in column G, you're getting state aid of, roughly $574,000 a year. You'll see the first year and the last year are a little different because of how the timing works out, that you might get a half year of building aid. But generally speaking, the building aid is going to be about that $574,000, and so that would leave you with a local share of roughly $345,000 a year. So that's the impact of this potential project in and of itself. Now, if you roll that forward on the next page, we get back to that page we started at, the summary of the debt service. Only now we've dropped in some new columns there, and you can see column G. We pulled over the local share from that maturity schedule. So we've taken that $345,000, we've dropped it in the years where it fits, and then we've layered that in with your existing debt service. So that kind of gives you the picture in numbers, but then what's really helpful on the next page, we'll look at that bar chart again. And this is where you can see we've now taken those blue and red lines and we've dropped in a third color, the green line, so that's the potential capital project. And you can see where, we've got that kind of bar that we've set, the dashed line there, that we don't want to exceed if we can help it, that's where you're at today. So if we can keep it at that bar below, then you're kind of looking at a no impact project, so to speak. So you can see that's why we've sized this project to about that $345,000 level, which gets you the $11.8 million, is because that's what builds you up to that bar in those first couple of years. Now, the thing you'll notice here is after those first 2 years, you have some drops again. We just by kind of the nature of how you have to structure things, local finance law in New York State, we can't have what's called balloon payments. You have to have essentially level or declining debt service. So when you've got some more future drops out there, we can't go and say like, okay, well now we've got another drop in the 23 year, let's bump up that local share. We're kind of locked in once we've started the payment schedule to be at that or below. So that's why you see those future drops. Now that would be an opportunity potentially for, you're just talking about planning one right now, right? So you don't want to get 2 projects, 3 projects ahead, but that's where you could start looking at every couple years, you can roll some projects in, and maybe you can capture some of those drops as well to continue meeting your needs. But that's why we don't have every single one of these green bars going all the way up to that line, is because we're not able to with how we have to structure things in New York State. But that's kind of, you can see what we have done is with those green bars, we've made sure that every year stays below that line. So that's how we kind of backed into that number. And, I think Elliot mentioned that, he'll be getting into the building condition survey, and you can kind of see the recommendations and how that plays into this. But, as I mentioned earlier, kind of at the beginning of the presentation, this was, there's a lot of moving pieces, so you never want to say this was kind of a, worst case scenario, but you would think that with some of the other things you have working in your favor, the aid on that cash project, potentially bonding lower on the $3 million authorization, then this does have the potential, if you decide you do want to pursue a project, if you have the needs for it, this does have the potential to get better than the 11.8 million while still staying below that bar. So this is hopefully, this is a really early look at it. You're a year and a half out, and hopefully as you start to get into the planning process and we get closer to actually looking at any potential project, those things will kind of get more defined, and we can come up with a better estimate of what you actually could do for, no impact, so to speak. So that kind of covers what we had tonight for the report. I don't know if that answers all your questions, if you have any questions on anything in there.
On the last graph that you're showing us, what do you mean by no new bus purchase projected after 21, 22?
Right. So what we've done is, you've been purchasing buses each year, right? So we've kind of built in, I don't have it right in front of me, I could look it up, but I think we've assumed like roughly $1 million, maybe, $1 million, $1.1 million is what you've been doing each year. So we kind of projected out assuming that you would continue to have those bus purchases into the future to make sure that because there's a local share on that, right? You're purchasing buses, you get some aid back on it, but there is a local share component, and that's where you see those red bars. So where you see those red bars dropping off, that's where you can kind of see we haven't taken the bus schedules out for like the next 30 years of projections. So presuming you were going to continue to purchase buses at roughly that $1 million, $1.1 million level out into the future, those red bars may not drop off as much. So some of these drop-offs you see is kind of just the natural evolution that we only took the buses out for like 5 years to kind of get past when the debt service of this one comes on. So you'll see it, if we do no more projections after the 21-22 year, then that gets us out to the 22-23 year, which is where we can't, we were already having a drop anyway that we can't capture because we can't backload the debt. So it no longer impacted the planning for this potential project, so that's why we kind of stopped there. We want to make sure we get out far enough that there's not, an unexpected increase in the local share for a potential bus purchase that we didn't look at. So we took it out far enough to get to where the debt service on this potential project was already rolling. And then if you looked at, by the time you looked at a potential future project for some of these other drops, we would want to project the buses out further to make sure we were accounting for that in any of that planning. Does that make sense, or?
Not a word of it.
Okay.
No, I didn't catch that at all. So are you saying that you're assuming that if we were to put a project on the books that assumed the planning that you have here, that we would not purchase buses for a period of time?
No, I guess what I was trying to say is we're only taking the projection of the bus purchases out far enough to get past when this project would come on the books to make sure we've accounted, because I don't want to give you a $345,000 local share for a no impact project, and then all of a sudden I only took buses out through 2020 and you continue to purchase buses, and now all of a sudden when you layer that on with this new project, you do have an increase, right? So we took the bus purchases out far enough to when the debt service of this potential project came on to make sure that we were sizing it. Then you'll see, you have a drop off in the in the 23 year because we can't put additional debt service on that potential project, right? So at that point, the buses are not, unless all of a sudden you did something wild with buses out in the 23 year where you purchased $5 million of buses instead of $1 million, then that wouldn't impact that where we're projecting that line to be, right? If you're still continuing on with roughly $1 million, then these bars may not drop as much, but they would still be below that line. So that's why we kind of stopped looking at them at that point. I mean, if you really wanted us to, we could continue to just drop those schedules in for the next 5, 10, 15 years after that. But we took it out that far to make sure that we got past the impact for this potential project, so there's no surprises. And then at that point, as you get closer out to those years, you can start to build in those schedules again.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just, it's not probably a big issue unless there's something really interesting about it. In 2029, there's actually a, let's see, the local share for building debt jumps up about $100,000 over the prior year. Why is that? How is that structured that causes that to happen?
Yeah, I would have to look at the full debt service budgeting packet to look at the individual schedules to see what's causing that. But typically, what causes that is, the way the state pays aid is in either a full year block or a half year block, right? So they're going to say that whatever your project costs are, it equates to 15 years of aid at X amount of dollars, but depending on timing of when you file final cost reports, when you were able to file SA 139s, that can sometimes shift where you might not get a full year, you might only get a half year. And so sometimes just the way the timing of projects work, you may go to bonds before everything is totally locked in with the aid, and if all of a sudden the schedule shifts a little and the aid that half year of aid gets shifted forward or backwards, it can create like a slight mismatch in the local share, and that's where you can see a little bit of a spike up if the bond was already structured assuming one amount of aid, and then all of a sudden the half year slides forward or backward afterwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And I guess the only other thing that I would add is, it's wonderful to look at a graph like that drops off, but don't get too excited about it. That gets filled in pretty easily, and by 2023, we're going to be looking at a need for a lot more capital projects.
70-year-old buildings.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important reason to look at the building condition survey and your finances simultaneously, because there's never going to be a situation where we don't have work to do on 70-year-old buildings and/or, God forbid, new construction. So that's why we're here now. And if there's no more questions, Jason, thank you so much.
Yep.
It's always a pleasure having you. We
Thank you.
enjoy working with you and your firm and keeping us moving forward and honest. So thank you very much.
Yep, no problem. And if you dig into the report any more later and get any questions after we left, feel free to send an email or give us a call, and we'll get you answers on anything.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe trip home. Are you going home?
Yep.
Oh. Okay. Well, we're gearing up for the next presentation. I was remiss, I forgot to mention that we had staff members and students participate in the marathon on the walkway. In fact, there was a very nice picture of Cynthia Petrovitz on the front cover, and one of our art teachers and some of our former students actually placed in the event. So just want to throw that in while we're getting ready for our next one.
Elliot, you're up. Yep.
Yeah, so the building condition survey, as Elliot's going to tell you, is a requirement every 5 years. It's a relatively recent requirement, and I think it was a recognition on the state. I guess I'm getting old. It's been a while, but for a while, too frequently, because it's very difficult to go back to taxpayers and say we need money. buildings crumbled. You know, there were decades where buildings crumbled and districts didn't go out, and then, you know, what could have been fixed or repaired at one price is now a total overhaul, or having the building condition survey is certainly a good thing. And so here's Elliot to go over our, if you recall, sorry, Elliot, we did have one presentation on the building condition survey. It was more about process, and two already. And then after the last one, we said that our plan was to have Elliot go back, have the facilities department do some prioritization, and then we can take it to the board, that prioritization list, and then from there, we start to take it back to facilities meetings with the community to discuss the findings and make future plans. And I know you're going to talk about that too, so.
All right. Thank you very much. That was quite the introduction. I'm usually I come up here and talk about things that need to be done, and somebody looks at me and says, yeah, how are we going to pay for that? So thank you, Jason, for explaining exactly how those things get paid for. I want to start this conversation where we left off in April. I was up here April 23rd with, I think it's 23rd, 26th, with the architect, Brian Manning, from CS Arch, who conducted our building condition survey for us. And we wrapped it up with some bottom line numbers and statistics. So when we added up all of the items that we projected would need attention in the next 5 years, we came up with a total construction cost number of just over $24 million. We did discuss that if you were going to do those things as a comprehensive project, there's a lot of expenses like architects, construction managers, Jason from BPD, and all the folks that we work with to get these projects done at an inflation estimation of about 40%. So that would give us, again, if we were to do the whole thing as a bunch of projects bundled together, it would put us at about $34 million. And that was just to help us really wrap our minds around the volume of expense that's needed in our building condition survey. As we just discussed, we've got birthdays coming up. Our youngest building, North Park, is 49 years old. Roosevelt High School's just turned 50 this past year. The first graduating class of the new building graduated 50 years ago this month. And they'll be celebrating their reunion in a couple of months. So it gives you an idea of the age of the buildings we're dealing with. Our oldest buildings, dedicated by Mr. President Roosevelt himself, are now 77 years old. And to Dr. Reichek's point, the National Center for Education Statistics did a condition of public school facilities report in 2012-13 school year. They do this about every 5 to 10 years. And in the most recent report, they showed 53% of all public schools in this country, based on their survey data, need to spend roughly $4.5 million per school to get their schools up to good condition. So these are statistics showing that more than half of the schools in this country are at a less than good physical condition. And the EPA tells us what effect that has on our students. Average daily attendance affected by 4 to 5 students per 1,000 for schools without a major maintenance backlog. And by addressing that backlog, annual dropout rates can be reduced by 10 to 13 students per 1,000. Every time we go to the high school, Mr. Party, our principal, says our goal is to graduate more students. Well, these statistics can show you what the building condition can affect that can have on a student graduation rate. So I want to get into how we came up with these recommendations today. 4 big topics that we looked at: frequency and similarity of related items. If we're going to do something someplace, if we can do that same thing in more than one place, we can reduce costs and related expenses. Impact to instruction. Our business is educating children, so of course everything that we want to do wants to be centered on education. Estimated useful life, we talked about that too. Anything that I've quantified in the previous report and anything that we're going to touch on today is something that we estimate is going to need attention in the next 1 to 5 years. And the State Education Department asks us to grade our building systems and equipment accordingly, based on estimated useful life. And of course, cost. How much do things cost? If cost wasn't an issue, I wouldn't be up here talking to you about prioritizing projects. We would just go ahead and do everything. So, I want to start with the secondary schools. We had 51 items listed in that $24 million assessment. 51 items in the 1 to 5 year synopsis. FDR High School had 18 of those 51. It was 35% of the total items listed. Now, some statistical data on Roosevelt High School, it represents 32% of our total district square footage. The 18 items listed represented 53% of our total cost estimation at just under $13 million. 5 of those items were specifically related to the pods, And of the other 13, roughly half of them were related to building-wide equipment or systems. Conversely, Haviland Middle School, much less. They come in with 7 items, 14% of the total 51. Haviland Middle School does represent 24% of our total district square footage, but only in this case 12% of the total cost estimation. And I want to highlight specifically that of that almost $3 million, 2/3 of that is 2 major items, the slate roof on the C-section and the septic system of that building. So as many of you know, we've spent just over $3 million, or we're spending $3 million right now on a current project, and we spent just under $1 million on other things over the last 5 years, beyond some of the work we've done at other buildings, necessitated by need and emergency conditions. And it's reflected here. If we weren't doing those projects now, there'd be another $3 or $4 million on this tacked on for the things we're addressing currently. At the elementary level, we've got 51 items. 24 of them are related to the elementary schools. So just under half of our total items reflect all of our elementary buildings. But only 34% of the total cost estimation. And this is where we start to see common trends developing between the buildings of similar age. Classroom HVAC equipment, and we talked about why we're doing a controls project. We've never upgraded HVAC equipment in classrooms until right now at the Haviland project, with one exception back in the 80s in a specific piece of Haviland and a specific piece of HPE. So I will say that is the minor exception to that. Water well replacement. We've got 3 well systems in the district. We replaced the pump, the well pump at FDR just about 2 years ago. And we're looking at upgrading and replacing the well systems at Netherwood and North Park. We've got historic roofs, not just at Haviland, but also at Violet Avenue and HPE. And plumbing, fixtures, and piping, there's a lot of discussion now about water systems, infrastructure, pipes, lead, copper, all these things. And most of our water systems within our buildings are original to the buildings. Focus on instructional needs. As you can see over Mr. Heater and Dr. Rychek's head, we post our mission statement everywhere. It's all over this presentation, and I wanted to put it here specifically to highlight what our focus is. Hyde Park Central School District empowers our community to strive for excellence and embrace the opportunities of a globally connected world. Well, we would be remiss to talk about building conditions if we didn't think about whether or not our buildings are currently constructed to reflect that mission, to empower our staff to achieve that mission. And so we consider things like classroom redesigns and reconfigurations. Do the rooms we have meet the curriculum needs that we have? We're looking at a strategic plan, a district leadership team that's formulating a concept and a construct of what the education of these children is going to look like in the next 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 years. Well, are the rooms that the education takes place in built to support that mission? We're talking about things like science rooms, STEM labs, art studios, auditoriums. FDR is not the only building with an auditorium. We have a beautiful one at Haviland Middle School. We've got one at Ralph R. Smith. We've got combination rooms at all the elementary buildings. Collaborative learning environments. I mean, all throughout the year, you've heard Cora, Greer, Viva talk about all the wonderful things that are being done in education with learning environments. Well, can our buildings be reshaped to fit those models? We've also got building infrastructure. If we're going to modify rooms, do the systems in those rooms also need modification? Are we prepared to integrate technology? Do we have the data wiring? Do we have the electrical supplies? Our plumbing systems, are they equipped to handle the things that we're looking to reshape and rebuild around the educational mission of this district?
And you skipped over that word air condition. Oh, no, it says age and condition. Never mind.
Age and condition.
Along with HVAC, and I'll just throw it out there now, is, we just mentioned, we're year-round.
That's correct.
So eventually we have to look at either selecting or identifying a building that if we're looking at an HVAC project, we say, okay, this is going to be our year-round school, because it's really hard to put students in a year-round school without air conditioning. So,
that's right.
Just throwing that out.
I can give you a little anecdotal perspective on that. The average size classroom requires a 30 amp circuit for a dedicated air conditioner to run that classroom. Most of us have 200 amps of service in our homes. So that means that once you get to about 6 classrooms, you're adding as much electricity as most people have in their entire house to the drain on a school building system. And our elementary schools have about 25 classrooms in them. So if you don't plan properly, we can get very wasteful and really strain our system. So it's an integral part of the planning process. And now we get to cost. And this is where I really appreciate Jason going before me, so I don't have to get too deep into this. But we look at multiple items. Can we bundle things to reduce cost? Mr. Wirt is in the back. He's going to talk to you about technology planning. And if he was going to ask me to run a bunch of data cables through a wall, it's a lot easier to do that when the wall's not there. If I have to rerun ductwork for HVAC systems, it's a lot easier to do that when the ceiling's not there. So we talk about how can we really properly plan projects to conceptualize the end result and address as many things as possible on the way to achieving that goal, where one project does help you address another. This not only reduces cost, but it reduces lead time, because now that's one submission to SED. You heard Jason say that the State Education Department is right now looking at a 9 to 10 month backlog. I mean, they tell me 36 weeks, they tell the superintendents 32 weeks. You got to figure we're somewhere in the middle. We're at about 8-9 months before we can really expect to get anything back from SED. So by bundling things together, you're only sending it up once and eliminating almost a year of lead time. Funding sources, I don't really have to say much about that, but just that we're not just looking at borrowing money from taxpayers. There's a lot of other avenues we can pursue. Sometimes we have cash on hand to put towards projects like our controls project. We establish a capital reserve so that we can use that money to offset the impact to our local share. And we also have things like the Smart Schools Bond Act, and I'm sure when we talk about the technology planning, there's a caveat in that litigation that says that if a portion of a capital project can be allocated to the Smart Bond, then that money can come from the Smart Bond Act towards the capital project. You just don't get aid on it because it's 100% funding for that piece of the project. So we want to look at all the different avenues we have for funding and not just say we need to borrow all this money from the taxpayer. So here's my recommendation as requested back in April. Before we get too deep into what this looks like at a specific level, we're going to host 2 community meetings in the very beginning of the fall, or throughout the fall semester, in the beginning of the school year for 16-17, to gather feedback from our constituents, our taxpayers, our parents, our teachers, our administrators. We're going to bring folks together to really discuss specific needs. But my recommendation, based on the BCS, is that we look at 2 phases. And the reason I say 2 phases is this is a 5-year plan. It takes us about 2 years to do a capital project, and we're looking to start this next one. If we're going to build one, it's going to be starting throughout the next year for a vote in December 17 based on a lot of the things that Jason discussed. So I would recommend we look at a comprehensive Roosevelt High School renovation. Statistically, Roosevelt is our largest population center. It's our largest cost center by far, and it is in the greatest overall need of renovation. When you're the youngest building, you tend to get the least amount of attention. And our youngest building's creeping on 50 years. So it's time to start looking at some of the things that run throughout that campus. It has to be a curriculum-based plan, and that's why this is not a very detailed slide, because until we know exactly where curriculum's going, we can only guess what these items are going to be. But my recommendation is to consider building out from the pod section. The pod section represents about 35% of the building square footage, but more than half of the BCS items at least touch the pods. So can we focus, if we're going to do something like a 12-month section of the building, a technology or an art section of the building, can we really develop
The science
this
lab section of the building.
science lab section, whichever?
Maker spaces.
We do know that the pod is built a little bit differently. And for those that are not familiar with the high school building itself, it was a 1977 addition to a 1965 building. When population was booming, IBM was really busy, and we had a whole lot of kids coming to school in shifts. And they built what was in vogue in the 70s as modular classroom construction, which means walls that don't really stay up and stay still, doors that don't like to close properly, drop ceilings, and lots of things that are easy to demolish and reshape should we decide that we want to rebuild.
Not to mention a difficult supervision issue, and they're just ridiculous to find your way around.
If you're new to the district and you can get through the 300,
yeah.
400, 500, 600 pods, I'm impressed.
I just want to clarify, just, for the public, when you say build out from the pods, you're saying just not add on. I just want you to clarify that. We're not talking about making the pods bigger or adding on. So
right. We're not looking to make any of our buildings bigger, but yes, to start in that area of the building and plan outwards from that section of the building throughout the rest of the building. It's just, if I can be candid, the 1965 section is built a lot sturdier than the 1977 part.
Absolutely, there's no question.
It would cost a little bit more to modify the 65 section than it would be the 77. So if we can look at the newer portion that we can agree is probably not as sturdily built as the rest of it, and bolster it, reinforce it, reshape it for what our kids need, we can wipe out maybe a dozen of these BCS items that are things that should be addressed by addressing the things that we feel we need to address from a curriculum aspect. And that's the last statistic there, 30 to 50%. So the second phase, again, we're looking at a 5-year window. If we can get a second project built in, we should start looking at district-wide issues, things that would preclude education, things that prevent us from opening the doors if they go bad. Things like roofs, HVAC equipment, well and septic systems. If the Haviland emergency project taught us anything, it's if you let something go long enough, it'll cost you school days, and that's not okay in our business. I think we can all agree on that. So to properly plan and get ahead of this, we want to make sure we never have to close those doors again in an emergency. And these are the type of projects that we need to look at in order to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's it for me. If you have any questions or anything I can clarify, I'd be happy to address.
A question. I was here when we went through the renovations of the windows at the middle school, Violet Avenue, and the enormous amount of effort and time consumed because those buildings were historic sites, and the fact you have about 2 additional layers of approvals and stuff to go through. Has that situation improved at all in terms of the slate roofs?
I don't know that it's improved. SHPO and all of those organizations are still what they are, but I guess you could say that the firms that we deal with have gotten a little bit better at navigating them, maybe. But our cost estimates are based, I mean, that's why we figure on more than $1 million to do 70,000 square feet of roof at Haviland. It's because of, that we need to put it back to its historic status. We can't just replace it with something that looks the same. It's got to be aesthetically and functionally the same materials.
I just can't believe they found a picture of Roosevelt standing on the roof like they found a picture of Roosevelt standing in front of the entrance to the school. I mean, that one photograph, I would not even want to speculate how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it cost us.
You better hope there's no bats either, or turtles that, once you put a stake in the ground. And
Arlington's still looking for that turtle.
If you combined historic preservation with, some of the other things that can come into play, the unanticipated.
For those that are not familiar, maybe in the audience on the television, the Arlington School District invested well over $1 million in when they added the ball fields and softball fields and stuff behind the school, just to preserve a habitat for one species of turtles. And I'm not sure they ever found a living turtle of that species to prove that it was necessary. But there they went.
Right. Perry, you had a question?
Yeah, a couple questions. So you've got a phase 1 and a phase 2. Do you have any sense as to what you would propose the timing would be between phase 1 and phase 2? Are they consecutive? Are they so it's one project, so it might happen consecutively?
It could be consecutive. It could be overlapping. Essentially, I think other than HVAC equipment, which is classroom equipment, there wouldn't be much overlap, except for we'd be doing HVAC equipment in the main section of Roosevelt versus a renovation in the pod section. If we were to do a pod renovation, it would include the HVAC system, which is independent of the main building.
Mm-hmm.
So you could essentially, close off the breezeways and not affect the main part of the building. So if the second project started up in the main section, it really wouldn't have an effect. But we're using current time estimates. If you remember, we did a referendum for the current Haviland project September 14. And it's going to be done, the majority of it will be done this summer, wrapping up this fall, just about 2 years out. So if we were to do a 2017 referendum to be completed in 19, if through the course of 19 we're planning a second phase, we would have a projection to complete it round about 2021 as we're building the next 5-year capital plan.
So phase 1 would be one referendum, phase 2 would be another referendum a couple of years later?
Yeah, theoretically. I mean, would I love to do everything in one shot? Sure. Just keeps me really busy for a couple of years. But financially speaking, I know that when Jason talked about his $11.8 million would be just the next drop-off in debt service, I don't know that we can do all of this with $11 million, but I think we could really take a big swing at one of the two phases with $11 million. And then as our debt service drops off in another year or two, we can see what we can do. The reason I wrote it this way also is because phase 2 is a lot more scalable than phase 1 would be. So given that we may have half of the funds available, we can plan out how to scale that accordingly. Plus, we have the capital reserve at our disposal as well.
The other thing that comes to mind is I look at that and you're talking about roofing, and I always think of roofing as being, a rather high priority, but yet you've got it in phase 2. Do we have active roof issues, leaks on these historic slate roofs, or?
We have. It's been manageable. However, in the last 2 years, our expenses for managing those roofs has begun to escalate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I estimate that it will still be manageable in another year or two, but much further out from 5 years, I think you're going to start seeing a pretty sizable impact on our general fund if we don't address it. So there's no major failure right now, but...
Are you able to inspect the full underside of those roofs? I mean, to know that the...
I've had portions of the slate roof removed and repaired.
Okay.
And I think that the repairs we've done were pretty substantial this year. I mean, we had this single year, we had a 300% increase in roof repair on the slate roof at Haviland, mostly at Haviland, some at HPE, some at Violet. But the repairs that were done are things that shouldn't recur.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any imminent failures projected at the current time where I think we got to do this next year or else.
Yeah.
But I'd be foolish to not plan it.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I know you're aware of it. When you think you've got a roof problem, the potential of having a larger roof problem is there.
Right, and that's why this year we
it's
had
an
a problem
iceberg kind of
here.
thing.
We built out this way and this way to try to address as
Yeah.
much of it as possible while we were able to do so.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you.
That brings us to the technology updates.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rick Wirt, Director of Technology, and welcome to my first report in this role. So, without further ado, the District Technology Committee, subcommittee of the board, and I've been working with them since April, and in that time, it's an impressive group, and they really had two major goals they've been working on this past year. And in April, May, and June, these really were the things that they worked on. The Smart Schools Bond Investment Act, which, as you know, we'll talk in more detail about that. And we're talking about right now creating part one of a multi-year spending plan and preparing the district for the one-to-one initiative at Haviland Middle School. That's the Chromebook rollout and all the policies around that. So we've been working on that as well. And what do we need to have in place to support that one-to-one environment? So first part of the work that we've been doing back in the old tech offices, aside from supporting all the technology in the district and all the learning, is a required element from New York State called the Tech Plan Survey. And if you go on our website right now, you'll see last year's survey. Quite honestly, it was just a matter of hitting rollover answers and then updating all the information. The Tech Plan Survey had 4 main goals, and those are up there. They probably look pretty familiar about improving literacy, closing some gaps, improving our math performance, and improving our graduation rate. What we did is we looked at our current inventory and infrastructure, and the survey asked for any equipment that was less than 5 years old. So when you look at those numbers, just bear that in mind. It's not the complete list. It's only the stuff that's less than 5 years. So we updated all those numbers. We talked about some future purchasing, the provision of Chromebooks to FDR teachers in the fall of 2016, for one instance. We talked about the huge amount of professional development that was offered in the area of technology this past year. A lot of it focused at Haviland. So it just lots and lots of hours are included in that plan. And then we talked about some more detail around some purchases we're looking to make in the coming year. The Smart Schools Bond Act, as you know, we have been allocated $2.6 million from New York State to spend on technology and infrastructure. There's actually 4 categories. One is installing high-speed broadband and/or Wi-Fi. We're really good in that area with the wireless project that was undertaken a year or two ago. That's really very solid. The only pieces we're looking at that is maybe some more hardwired ports in different classrooms, because there's usually just one port in each room. We may need to look at doing something around that area. Acquiring learning technology is really where the bulk of the expenses are lying. And if you look at the approved plan, that's pretty much what the 53 approved plans are all about. They're all about acquiring learning technology. In that area, we're talking about these kinds of things: interactive screens, interactive whiteboards for teachers. Pre-K rooms and replacing trailers, we're not looking at dedicating any money to that. We don't have pre-K trailers, so that's a really happy thing, so no money there. And then installing high-tech security features is another area that we're looking at down the road possibly. What part of the great work that the committee has done is they've created really criteria and a wish list that we're working off of as we look at these 4 categories. So again, there's no deadline for expending the funds. We can't use them for PD or tech support, and the technology committee is really doing the yeoman's work on creating these plans. So for phase 1, what we're looking at submitting to the state for approval is purchasing 250 touchscreen Chromebooks for the staff at Haviland and FDR. And for the students, we have non-touch screens. They're keyboards, they're a screen, that's it. The reason why touchscreen is a change in philosophy of how you look at teaching. Right now, if you walk into a classroom, and even what we have here, we have a large touchscreen. A lot of the new research, a lot of the new practices coming out are talking about keeping the interactivity where the teacher is on that screen in front of them and sharing that screen with the students. So we're trying to think ahead as we talk about buying Chromebooks. We want to have teachers using that Chromebook interactively while they're teaching. We're talking about, as our 6th graders move up, they're given a Chromebook, just as this year's Haviland students will be getting a Chromebook. So it's purchasing 300 more for next year's incoming 6th grade. And then, of course, the big expense would be the interactive flat panel screens and a document camera for each teaching space at Haviland. That's a total of about 90 screens. We were actually very fortunate. We had a couple of companies really vying for our business. So we invited them to send us demo units, much like this was once a demo unit for us. And so we had 3 different models that the staff was actually able to play with over the course of a week or 2, and one of the units is still there. And we did a couple PD sessions. People came in, they looked at them, they played with them, they talked about them, they asked questions, and we're really feeling very confident about the choice we're making moving forward with that. And then next steps. So what happens next is our tech survey has been updated. It has been approved. And it will be posted on the website for review. It's going to the Duchess BOCES for review by the tech director there. From there, it goes to the state. From there, it becomes, and again, it is just a survey. It's just looking at information, updating that information. The preliminary Smart Schools Investment Plan. So there is a process here. And what that looks like is you look at it, and if you approve it, it gets posted on, it's a preliminary approval. It gets posted on our website for 30 days with a public comment period. At 30 days later, it's approved by the Board of Education with whatever revisions. Then it gets sent to the state. The state committee reviews our proposal and our spending plan. And if they like it, they approve the money, and then we can start spending. That whole process, the state committee meets quarterly. Their last meeting was just in May. The next meeting will be in August. So at this point, with the timelines in place, we would not be able to spend any money under the Smart Bond Act probably until spring, maybe January of 2017. So it is quite a timeline. And there you go. So that is kind of where we are. So again, we've had the survey that is completed. We're in the midst of the Smart Bond Act. And any questions I can answer for you.
Anyone? Any questions?
Yeah. Rick, you were talking about, you touched on the one-to-one initiative that we're driving at HMS.
Right.
And a lot of technology upgrades besides simply issuing laptops to students. So, and a one-to-one, for anyone who doesn't know the language, means 1 laptop per child. Right. The assumption is also that every administrator or teacher would also have access to that kind of tooling. In addition to that, we've been talking about document cameras and some sort of an interactive board, a whiteboard, some sort of a digital display like this for every room. And really, the two initiatives, as I've understood it through the process, go hand in hand. It's really hard to run a classroom where every student has a laptop if you don't have some sort of digital display at the front. It's really hard to do if you can't put a document on a camera and show everybody at once, or you can't capture an image to spread around the classroom. Those are the advantages of technology. According to what I understand you just said, we don't have the access to the funds for half of that project.
That's correct. Yes,
So-
the individual student Chromebooks were already purchased. We were able to purchase them in this year's budget. So the 900 Chromebooks that are going out to have on students in September are ready. We'll be working, the tech department's going to work on those over the summer, get them ready to roll. That's all set. The staff already have, they don't have touchscreen Chromebooks, but they have Chromebooks. So that's ready. The part that we are missing is indeed the flat screens, the document cameras, and all those pieces, yes.
So it seems to me as if we are going into this initiative not entirely ready equipment-wise. We have the staff that's been appraised of what our plans have been, and I think that the feedback I've gotten is that they're enthusiastic. They're very interested in
Yes.
the one-to-one initiative and what it can do for the students and for the building. So morale is high. So I'm a little concerned about the impact that not having this stuff in the buildings and in the rooms on September, the first day of school is going to have on what has been a very labor-intensive piece of work to plan for the one-to-one. So I'm wondering whether our administrative staff, the administration has looked at other ways to fund that, some of that work in order to be ahead of it. So do you have any alternative numbers or possible sources for funding?
That's something again, my goal is to create the technology plan, create what we need to purchase, price it out. I'm not sure where that kind of funding would come from. I've had very preliminary discussions. Part of our frustration administratively has just been the timeline, the way the state committee is working, their review process. Even in their first meeting where they had, I believe, over 100 applications, they only reviewed 53 of those. So they had a backlog from day one. In round two, they approved some more. The timing is outside of my control, so therefore the funding is outside of my control. If we were able to do something locally, I think you're right. I think there is a high level of enthusiasm with the have-on teachers and even the students. The teachers that had these boards in their rooms, they used them. As soon as they got there, they turned them on and they were using them. The one that we're actually purchasing is incredibly simple. It's easy to, you click on this gigantic button and a digital easel comes up and you use your finger to draw on the board. There's no pens, there's no calibration. It's incredibly simple. And the kids were using it day one, and they were doing really neat and creative things with it. So there's a high level of enthusiasm, absolutely. For the two PD sessions, I had easily 40, 45 people between the 2 days, which is a great number for people to show up to these. So yes, there's a high level of enthusiasm, and I do worry about losing the enthusiasm if everything's not ready to roll in September. And if you look at Theresa McKenna in the back, she's noted for saying, we will have this done. And right now, the money is getting in our way.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's my understanding that we're really just waiting for state ed approval for us to spend the money.
That's correct.
They basically said we've got, the state has $2.6 million for us to spend on technology.
Right.
And now they're saying, well, okay, go wait in line
Yes.
so that we can review your plans.
That's very accurate, yes.
So what I would like for our administration to do is spend some time over the next couple of weeks to see if we can come up with some fraction or all of the roughly $385,000 it would take to get that done.
Right.
Um,
To outfit Haviland with 90 screens, 90 interactive screens, document cameras with installation and all the brackets that are required, it's close to $400,000. So 385 is a good number.
Yeah, I mean, it's a breathtaking number, and
Yeah.
you know, by no means am I saying that this is going to be trivial. On the other hand, I
Nor,
don't.
yeah, and I think well, I'm going to let Linda speak, but we have to be really, really careful. And, I mean, it's definitely something we can explore. I do know from some of my colleagues who were some of the first 53, that was the state, the approval came after 5, 6, 7, 8 go-rounds. The good news is that they've shared with many of us what were some of the things that, you know, they were looking for, so that the rest of us don't have to go through submitting it 6 or 7 or 8 times. But I'll turn it over to Linda, who might have some comments at this early stage.
Yeah, Rick and I briefly talked about this earlier. He just explained to me that the timing is really bad. We certainly don't want to spend money that we expect to get back from the smart bonds before we have the approval. If we do want to look at spending money locally, we have to spend it through equipment budget that we already have. The equipment codes are non-contingent items, and we're not allowed to move money into those codes from another place. So we'd have to look at the equipment budget we already have in place and see if we can redirect any of those funds towards this project.
So what I'm thinking is that that $385,000 number that sticks in my head from our meeting earlier this week represents the total volume of work. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need all of it done by the first day of the school year. There's some subset that is critical to have done. Those are going to be, you know, teachers' work, the room that the teachers are going to be in and day out. On the other hand, it seems like there could be part of the equipment budget that you were just talking about, Linda, that could be set aside for that. I recognize that whatever we spend now, we can't be reimbursed for from the grant that the state has given us. So in my mind, we spend that on other technology. But I think we've got an opportunity here to improve the outcomes of our district for decades to come if we do this rollout right. If we do this rollout and make a mistake or demoralize the building, it's an opportunity that's missed. So I know I'm asking a lot, but I can't tell you how important I think this is for the district.
We can certainly look at what we already have in equipment and see if there's anything that we can hold off on there to redirect that to this project.
Linda, if that were done, if we were able to come up with the money and get
Yeah,
the screens in and the cameras and stuff like that, that would leave us with a gap in the proposal we presented to the state for the utilization of the money, right? That no longer would be $385,000 we needed because we've already spent it, and that $385,000 wouldn't be covered in the plan we presented.
I believe.
Are we exposed to lose that money?
Actually, what's interesting is the plan that you would be looking at. It's for 90 screens, and it's not building specific. So those 90 screens could easily be purchased for FDR, which would be the next building we would want to look at for this technology.
And they're not specific in the plan either?
If
All
it
right.
does reference a building, it can be edited. Because again, the preliminary review period for 30 days is where we are allowed to go through and change things and update it.
Yeah, we can look at it, and then, you know, we'll do what we can. But I also think that there's enough technology going in that if we have to manage the message for 4 months, we're not going to lose the morale for the whole next 10 years of our technology program if we're a couple months behind. And I think the goal is to see if there is anything we can do, but not do anything that jeopardizes our current financial status.
certainly.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to
Yeah.
take a risk.
Yeah. So we'll get back to you.
Any other
For
questions?
the board. Yeah.
I have one. That under the Smart Schools Bond Act, under the categories, it mentions install high-tech security features. Do you have any specifics on exactly like what some of those features would be?
So they talk about security cameras, certainly, card access readers. They talk about door hardening, so creating vestibules. It's exterior doors, not necessarily classroom doors, unless you do automated door locks. So there are actually systems where you can lock every classroom door at the push of a button. That's something Elliot and I would be working on, and also the tech committee would be doing recommendations and those kinds of things.
Right.
That would be phase 2. We've not really addressed that. The focus for phase 1 has really been about the Haviland technology. When we start talking about the security features, that's a conversation that's really yet to be had.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Well,
Rick?
thank you all very
Matt?
much.
Thanks, Rick.
At this time, I have a motion to enter public participation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. At this time, if anybody would like to address the board, you step to the mic. If you'd step to the mic, and we'll be happy to listen to you.
Good evening. This is my first board meeting, so I'm trying to teach my daughter a lesson. She's Sophia. She goes to, she'll be attending Haviland Middle School next year. She's coming from Ralph R. Smith. I'm here on behalf of a lot of the parents from Ralph R. Smith. Something's happened in the last few weeks that we're really...
And before you get into that, could you just say who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Hi, I'm Lisa Lipinski.
Okay, thank you.
I wrote a letter to the board, and I found out there was a board meeting today and felt that it was important that I came and addressed it in person because I'm passionate about the reason I'm here. Ralph R. Smith is lucky to have an awesome teacher. Her name is Erin Daniels. I have never seen a person look at a child and just get them and understand them completely. As an educator, she's amazing to watch. Just as a parent, I was just amazed at everything she's ever done. My daughter, Sophia, was very lucky to have her. She was in a position to be able to move up to the middle school and has been denied. And I'm here on the parents' behalf that support her, that you reopen and look at this situation. As a parent, I would want somebody who's as talented as Erin to be in a position to teach not necessarily my daughter, our children, because the middle school's that middle realm of being, and her as an educator in a position in the middle school would benefit so many other children. If one child benefits from her education, it's the greatest thing that could ever happen. I also know the other teacher who was in the position, Mrs. Ramsey. My daughter was lucky to have both teachers. They're both very talented. I feel, and I actually got 50,000 texts to come here tonight from other parents that somebody needed to address this situation, that they need to reconsider and look at Erin Daniels' position. Every child to her is a special person, whether the child has Asperger's or that the child has ADHD. She doesn't judge them. She finds their little being and creates and makes them go forward and find the best in themselves. My daughter, she likes to write, and she made me open my eyes to how talented my daughter was. Please open your eyes and re-look at Erin Daniels and get to know her. She is the best person to put into Haviland for all the children that's got to go forward into the high school. She's that good person to be on the middle level. She's very talented. She's great where she's at, but she would be awesome at Haviland Middle School. And I'm here for you guys to reopen and look at that situation on the behalf of a lot of parents. I'm not just me, there's a whole group of us. I'm just their voice, and I didn't mean to cry. But that is what I'm here for, and hopefully you guys can readdress the situation and let her move up. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board? Steve?
Good evening, Steve Hughes, district resident. I hope you'll indulge me in a little bit of reminiscing / history lesson. I'm going to sound like somebody's grandfather, but you young whippersnappers don't know how good you have it. There's a handful of us that remember the district from about the late 90s and the first couple years of the 2000s, when we really had a dearth of leadership, especially in the form of the superintendent. We had one superintendent who completely disrespected the board and refused to create a budget. We had another one that left in the middle of the night suddenly with no warning. We had another one that was just interim. And it was really a rough time. The district was in trouble. And then in early 2000s, we had same kind of ilk superintendent, but he did one good thing, and he hired Carol Pickering, who was an awesome assistant superintendent for instruction. And when the board finally, and I was on the board at the time, when the board finally decided to show that superintendent the door, we unanimously said, Carol is the one to step in as superintendent. And she did a terrific job. But at the time, we were concerned because Carol was a very good assistant superintendent for instruction. So we charged her with her first task was to find somebody to replace her. And those of you who know Carol know she's an overachiever, and she certainly overachieved when she found her replacement in Cora Stemple. And being on the board is tough. It's a very difficult job. There are some very unpleasant things you have to do. But some of my most pleasant memories were my conversations and discussion with Cora, although I did give her some very challenging questions at times. She always came back with the answer, and she was always very thoughtful. And if you look at some of the outstanding administrators and teachers you have in the district now, they were because of Cora. And I want to congratulate her on a new job, wish her all the best. Her successes in moving up is definitely the district's loss, but it's good to know that you will still be working for the district, but in a much larger capacity. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Would anybody else like to address the board? May I have a motion to close public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right. Well, you want to put which as your parting gift to us? You have any words of wisdom, or you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. Yeah. First, thank you for sharing your experiences with Erin Daniels. We think she's phenomenal. Please make no mistake, we know how phenomenal she is. She is truly, a stellar teacher. We have a process in place where for requests for transfers, and from time to time there are openings throughout the district. And we look at our internal candidates. Unfortunately, we can't discuss specific personnel in public, but we can assure you that we know immensely how valuable Erin Daniels is. But will continue to be at Ralph R. Smith, just so everybody knows. Erin Daniels will still be employed in the district. She's currently a teacher at Ralph R. Smith. But we can't discuss specific individuals in public. But we really thank you for your input.
Good. Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't.
course, we've already agreed with Mr. Hughes, so.
Yes.
But it's nice to have everybody have a chance to say what they think of your tenure here, because you will be missed, so. Okay. I don't think there's anything for board discussions. That brings us to unfinished business. I have a motion for 9.1, second reading and adoption of policies 5300.10 and 4321.4.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I have a motion for the software agreement SS Works with LLC.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on that? Everybody got the information they needed, right?
I'm not sure if our board members to be, did they get the information as well? Linda, could you just briefly explain that, since they were with us the last time?
So AssetWorks is an online software system. We use it to track all of the major assets of the district. So that's all of our buildings, our equipment, our vehicles, the furniture. We're required to report in our financial statements the value of our assets and also the depreciation for those items that are depreciable. So the software tracks the assets and also calculates the depreciation. So it's something we've been using this software for 2 years now.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Down to...
Drum roll, please.
Yeah, I whopped this down too quickly. Sorry. That brings us to consent agenda. Sorry. Have a motion for 10.1, action on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That should bring us down to, I have a motion for 11.1, special education placements.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Dan?
I have reviewed the pack and recommend its adoption as presented. And I would like to comment that we get to the close of the year, the unbelievable caseload that the girls over in special ed have carried this year. This package we're winding down actually reflects programs and IEPs developed from over 1,000 parent, teachers, and student meetings this year that started in December, and here we are in June. And the fact that any of the young ladies are still walking around with their eyes open amazes me, because if you break that down, it's a heck of a lot of work in a very short amount of time.
Okay, thank you. So we took the vote, right? No, all in favor, sorry. Yeah, opposed, thank you. Why does this keep doing that to me?
You get a jumpy screen?
Yes. Can I have a motion for 11.3, lease renewal? I'm sorry, agreement for special education services.
So moved.
My cursor is just jumping
Second.
all over the place.
Got a tired Chromebook.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll do the lease renewal. We have a motion for the lease renewal from the town board for the senior center.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I'd just like to make one comment. The town has been with us for a while, having their senior center at Hyde Park Elementary. We're thrilled to have them. But just for full transparency, they are interested. They have I don't know the name of the class. It's an exercise. What is it? Senior size. They have an exercise class, and they are interested in, possibly using the gymnasium because it's just nicer to spread out. And what we've done is we've told them that informally right now through the summer months, it's 2 hours a week. It's 2 days a week for 1 hour. And they wanted to rent out the cafeteria. Well, it's hard to come up with a lease for 2 hours a day. Plus, we do use that cafeteria for a whole host of things. So what we did was informally, we told them that for the summer, they can have the gymnasium for their 2 days a week, the 1 hour. We'll take a look at it in the fall and see, if there's any way we can have and free of charge. I mean, they're just walking down the hallway, it's empty, there are senior citizens, and then, we'll take a look at it in the fall to see if there's a way to accommodate them when the room's available. It's difficult to tie up a room of that size for 2 hours a week and figure out a rent structure. So I just wanted full transparency that they're interested in that. We're going to just let them use the space as long as we can, where there's no conflicts, where they can go down and do their senior size in the cafeteria.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. A motion for 11.4, appointment of a student light board operator.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
I'm a little curious why we've got a single student coming through at this time of year. Aren't these things normally coming through in groups at a different time of year?
That's a good question. I don't think there was...
I mean, it's just an afterthought, and there's no reason to hold it up for answering that question, but it just seems a little out of cycle.
We can follow up and let you know why. We're thinking it
fine.
might be that we need her for the summer, but or maybe the student in place currently is graduating.
Sure.
Can
Follow
definitely,
up after the fact is fine.
great.
Not for stuff during the day, but
Okay.
school.
So like for Mr. President and stuff?
Moving on to 11.5.
No, it's like somebody rents the one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we had, well, he asked after we voted. Didn't we already vote?
Yeah, we already
Yeah,
voted.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Charge to get back there.
So brings us to 11.5, tax centauri reserve. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
We rehearsed that, though.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I have a motion for 11.6 to establish the fund for the 2015-16 tax centauri reserve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that one?
A question, I assume from the progression that these funds are open for about a 4-year period before the ability to question is gone, and we're just shifting the money from one where nobody else can make a claim now to one is just opening up, or is it something similar to that?
Well, we're only allowed to keep the tax cert reserves for each year for 4 years.
Okay.
However, the taxpayers can receive a refund on an assessment from longer ago than that. This year, we had tax certs that went back to 2006.
Oh, sure.
But we're not allowed to reserve for it
Okay.
longer than 4 years. So in a case like that, it comes from the unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. A motion for 11.7, consultant agreements for the police coverage.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, just one comment. I mean, I'm obviously not opposed to this, but I think we got to find a better method for dealing with this going forward. I just think it's a bizarre way to engage the folks that we're engaging to do this work.
Absolutely, and if you recall, I reached out, we had a meeting,
Yeah.
it's still unresolved.
Yeah.
We're gonna try again. I haven't heard back. I know I'm not sure what the holdup is.
Yeah,
They know
yeah.
what our thoughts are.
Okay.
I'll reach out again. And in this case, like, as you know, it's graduation,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yep.
we'd like to see it, definitely like to see a shift there. So I'll
Okay.
reach out again and,
Yep.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Well, it brings us back to public participation. I have a motion to enter public participation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Anybody like to address the board? Looks like nobody here. May I have a motion to close public
moved.
participation?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. And there are no other matters deemed necessary. Brings us to board subcommittee meetings. We did have an audit committee meeting where we met with the external auditor who gave us a kind of synopsis of the plan and how the external audit was going to be held, what the phases were and when they happened. So anything else on that?
There was, on that one, no.
No.
And we did have a special ed subcommittee meeting earlier this week, which was the last one of the current school year. That's where the figure came about the 1,000 meetings have been held to generate the IEPs, and these meetings proved to be immensely important and immensely informative. I've been on the special ed committee for quite a while, and over the last couple of years, the quality of these meetings and the information that's being shared has been a great help for me to understand this entire process, and I truly appreciate what has been done in this area of expanding and providing information. We even invited Mr. Heater to attend one day.
And I did.
He was wide-eyed and confused.
And there were a lot of acronyms that I didn't know. No. I believe there was the technology committee also, which I did not attend.
Yeah, there was a technology subcommittee meeting, and we got a preview of the presentation that we saw tonight, and a final overview and a couple of minor details with the handbook that's going to go out for the one-to-one at Haviland.
Okay, great. And I think that's it, right? This is the end of the month, so there's no... Okay, upcoming meetings. And the next meeting of the Board of Education will be July 12th at 6 o'clock here in this room. It is the annual organization meeting, and followed by a regular Board of Education meeting here in the administration office. That's July 12th. 6 o'clock. Unfortunately, we have to have a brief executive session to discuss contract issues and salaries. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The last time we had this, there was a question about whether we needed to appoint
The clerk, pro tem clerk first?
Yeah.
Should we do it before we go into?
You can do it now. I have it actually on the sheet in case you were going to need to do it. Because I need this.
Yeah, but we have a motion on,
So we have a motion on the table. I
Right.
move to amend it
okay,
to simultaneously appoint you as the clerk pro tem.
works for me. Any, okay.
So we need to vote on the amendment.
Let me vote on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now a vote on going into executive session. All in favor?
And do you want
Opposed?
to tell the visiting board members?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Do you intend to take any other action?
I don't have to.
Do you?
I'm going to come out, yeah. But you don't, just to
Just to adjourn.
Just to adjourn. Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll hope to be brief this evening.
report.
Yep.
Can I have a motion to go back to
So
open
moved.
session?
Second.
That would be Perry. Second by Jeff.
Suppose I should sit.
Any discussion? All in favor? We're now back in open session, so that was all 7 of us.
Move to adjourn.
All 6 of us. A motion to adjourn at,
Second.
My last motion.
yeah, 6 of us, and 10:16 by Kevin. Who seconded it? Steve?
I did.
Steve. Oh, any discussion? All in favor? We're all in favor, 6, okay.